Yahoo Fantasy Football. This is your Tucson Tackle Dummies semifinal week recap. Week 16 in the NFL. Who's going to play for the fourth Tucson Tackle Dummies Championship and that coveted gold trophy icon? Number one semifinal matchup of the week. Number 2, Inglorious Bear Jew knocked off number 6, Mustache Discount, 156.02 to 99.65. For the first time in team history, Bear Jew will be playing for the Tucson Tackle Dummies title after a 50-plus point win over a deflated Mustache team that lost quarterback Tony Romo to injury early in the contest. Romo scored no points, which also deflated the value of wide receiver handcuffed Dez Bryant, who fell short of projections with just 7.7 points this week. Even with both players meeting or exceeding projections, it still would be hard to see Mustache winning this one, as the team had a difficult time scoring in multiple areas. Wide receiver Steve Smith managed just 3.45 points this week, despite Carolina, his team, scoring 48 points this week. Tight end Visante Shenko scored no points at all. Running back Chris Johnson managed just 5.6 points, which was half of what he was projected for. And kicker Dan Bailey also may have suffered from the injury to Tony Romo, as he scored just 1 point this week. And on the defensive side of the ball, Mustache was outscored by 19 points by a Bear Jew defense that had 21 at defensive back, 16.5 at defensive line, and 14 at linebacker this week. Mustache only had 4 players beat projections this week, led by running back Jonathan Stewart with 16.15, Frank Gore with 15.85, and Reggie Bush with 14.4. Bear Jew had 9 players above projections this week, led by a game-high 25 from wide receiver Jordy Nelson. Quarterback Matt Ryan added 20.32, and running back Mashard Mendenhall had 21.35, needed to overcome the negative .1 from running back Ben Tate, and the fact that running back Khalil Bell, with his 18.9 points, sat on the Bear Jew bench this week. Bear Jew, with the decisive victory, will play for the 2011 TTD title next week, while Mustache will move to the third place game. So who's going to join Bear Jew in the championship? In the second semifinal matchup, number 5 Lombardi's Ghost knocked off number 1 seed What the Shell, 163.73 to 132.83. We will have another first-timer in the TTD title game as top wildcard Lombardi knocks off number 1 seed Shell in a 30-plus point win this week. For the first time in league history, the number 1 seed is not going to play for the championship after some poor performances and miscues with the starting lineup choices, leading to a tough loss for Shell. Shell closed a huge gap on Monday night by getting a team-high 28.33 from quarterback Drew Brees, plus 15.85 from wide receiver Marcus Colston, and 12 from kicker Matt Bryant, but still was not enough. Running back Maurice Jones-Drew added 19.9, and wide receiver Dwayne Bowe scored 15.5 points. However, Shell struggled at the usually solid running back position, getting just 1.1 from LeGarrette Blount and 2.75 from Cedric Benson. Along with Benson, fellow Cincinnati Bengal A.J. Green scored just 5.5 points at the flex this week. Meanwhile, on the bench, Shell had wide receiver Stevie Johnson with 10.2 points and wide receiver Reggie Wayne with 18.6. And over on defense, linebacker Darrell Washington was on the Shell bench for 10 points, while in the starting lineup was Von Miller with half a point this week. Had Shell managed to play these bench scorers in favor of the lowest starters, we actually would have had a different winner this week, unfortunately. Though playing the hypothetical game is a bit unfair, and it shouldn't take away from an excellent performance by Lombardi's squad this week. Lombardi had a game-high 31.21 from quarterback Tom Brady, plus wide receiver handcuff Wes Welker chipped in 17.5 points. Wide receiver Josh Cribbs surprised with 14.24, and running back Darren Sproles added 18.34 on Monday night to keep Lombardi out in front by a comfortable margin. And in the Little Things Matter category, on Wednesday, Lombardi signed free agent kicker Graham Gano, who this week went for 18.5 points, besting projections by just about almost 10 points this week. Lombardi's smart lineup moves and smooth production when it counts puts this team in a division rivalry game for the title against the same team that beat Lombardi to take the division title in the final week of the regular season, except this time the stakes are going to be much higher with the championship on the line. Shell will move into a matchup for third place after the loss, taking on Mustache Discount. Looking over at the consolation bracket this week, number 4 Mojo Jojo knocked off number 8 Championship Cheese 160.92 to 154.22. The highest scoring game of the week came down to a bad lineup call at quarterback for Cheese, who will now play for 7th place instead of 5th after taking quarterback TJ Yates for 3.83 this week instead of Josh Freeman, who scored 20.76 on the Cheese bench. Mojo will play for 5th next week thanks to a game-high 34.17 out of quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who didn't even play his entire game this week. Mojo got a combined 46.5 from wide receivers Brandon Marshall and Victor Cruz, plus 18.8 from wide receiver Julio Jones. For Cheese, Ray Rice led the way with 20.25 points, while waiver wire pickup wide receiver Denarius Moore scored 17.34. He also hit the jackpot wide receiver Robert Meacham, scoring a surprising 14.25, but tight end Antonio Gates was disappointing, scoring just 5 points this week. The Chiefs defense made up a lot of ground this week to keep this one close, outscoring Mojo 60.5 to 29 on that side of the ball, getting 15 from defensive back Charlie Pepra and 21 at linebacker. And this was without the injured and benched Patrick Willis at linebacker. The win for Mojo is the team's first postseason victory in TTD play and in their first season in TTD. And 5th place will be up for grabs next week. Cheese will have one more shot at a 2011 postseason win after losing the first 2 games of the postseason in the 7th place game next week. So who will join Mojo in the 5th place game next week? Number 3 AZ Chargers knocks off number 7 White Powerade 103.26 to 100.82. AZ Chargers gets the team's first ever TTD postseason win in a close, low-scoring affair. These teams combined for just 3 players in double digits and just 4 players above projections in a very underwhelming performance by both teams. Powerade had the game high with 21.62 from quarterback Michael Vick, but the team's next highest scorer was running back Michael Bush with just 9.9 points. AZ Chargers got the win on the back of quarterback Phillip Rivers with 15.36 and running back Steven Jackson with 13.2 points. Powerade could have stole this game had wide receiver Deion Branch in his 10.45 been in the lineup this week in favor of running back Benjarvis Green-Ellis, who scored just 1 point this week for White Powerade. AZ Chargers looks to close out the season in the 5th place game against another division winner in Mojo, while Powerade will have to wait at least another week for its potential first TTD postseason victory in the 7th place game against Cheese next week. So looking ahead, just to recap, Week 17 championship week in the Tucson Tackle Dummies League. Number 2 Bear Jew will take on number 5 Lombardi's Ghost in a Wildcat Division showdown for the 3rd time this season. These teams split their meetings in 2011, with Lombardi winning Week 1 and Bear Jew winning Week 14. These teams split their meetings in 2010 as well, and Lombardi won the only meeting between these teams in 2009, giving Lombardi the regular season edge over Bear Jew 3-2. This is the 3rd season for both squads and the first title game for both teams. Moving to the 3rd place game, the rest of the games, everybody's got something to play for. Number 1 Shell will take on number 6 Mustache. This will be the first meeting between these 2 teams in 2011. These teams met in 2009 in the postseason in the 5th place game, with Shell winning that one 129 to 103. Mustache, though, 2-0 all time in the regular season against Shell. In the 5th place matchup, number 3 AZ Chargers will take on number 4 Mojo Jojo. Mojo defeated AZ Chargers 161 to 125 in Week 10. Both teams are coming off their first ever Tucson Tackle Dummies postseason victories. And in the 7th place game, number 7 Powerade will take on number 8 Championship Cheese. This is the first ever meeting between these 2 teams. Powerade's still looking for that first ever TTD postseason victory, while Cheese has won at least 1 postseason game in every Tucson Tackle Dummies season and needs to win this one to keep that streak alive. So we'll see you back here next week for your championship take, and best of luck, I guess, to the owners of all the squads with their matchups in the final week of the season. We'll see you back this time next week for Who Wins It All.